She threw herself in front of the hunter's blade to save a wolf cub she'd never seen before, and as her blood stained the frozen earth, the most powerful being in the supernatural world materialized from shadow, his ancient eyes fixed on the dying woman who had just saved his heir. What happened next would shatter the boundary between life and death, between human and wolf, and awaken a destiny written in the stars thousands of years before she was born. The winter market in Thornhaven was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it had become a spectacle of cruelty. Lyra pressed through the crowd, her worn basket empty despite having walked 2 hours from her isolated cottage. The merchants had refused her coins again, the coppers worn so thin their faces had nearly disappeared. Being the town's herb woman meant nothing when people whispered "cursed" behind her back. Her daughter Ivy pressed close to her side, small fingers tangled in Lyra's patched skirts. "Mama, what's that sound?" Ivy whispered, pointing toward the market's center where the crowd had thickened into an ugly knot of excitement. A sound cut through the winter air, not quite animal, not quite human. It was the cry of something young and terrified. "Stay close," Lyra murmured, though every instinct screamed at her to turn away. But the healer in her, the part that couldn't ignore suffering, pulled her forward. The crowd parted reluctantly, and what Lyra saw made her stomach turn. In a crude iron cage, barely large enough for a dog, was crammed a wolf cub. But this was no ordinary wolf. Even Lyra, who had never seen one of the legendary creatures, knew that immediately. Its fur shimmered like moonlight on snow, and its eyes held an intelligence that seemed almost human. Blood matted its ethereal coat, where the iron bars had cut deep into its flesh. "Caught it near the ghostwood boundary," announced Aldrich, the master huntsman, his voice carrying the authority of someone who answered directly to Lord Blackwood. "These demon wolves have been attacking our livestock. Time we sent their kind a message." The cub whimpered, trying to make itself smaller, as Aldrich prodded it with a sharp stick through the bars. The crowd jeered and laughed. Someone threw a stone that struck the cage with a harsh clang. "It's just a baby," Lyra said, the words escaping before she could stop them. The laughter died. Every eye turned to her. "The witch speaks," someone muttered. Aldrich's scarred face split into an unpleasant grin. "Defending monsters now? Are we, Lyra? Perhaps you recognize your own kind." "I recognize cruelty when I see it," Lyra replied, her chin lifting despite her racing heart. "That cub has done nothing wrong." "Nothing wrong?" Aldrich pulled a wicked-looking blade from his belt. "These creatures are an affront to nature itself. Lord Blackwood has decreed that any silver wolf found on our lands is to be destroyed." He raised the blade, and Lyra saw his intent, not a quick death, but a slow, public execution, meant to entertain the crowd and warn any other supernatural creatures that might be watching. The cub's eyes, impossibly blue, like winter stars, met Lyra's across the square. In that gaze, she saw not an animal, but a child. A terrified, suffering child. "No!" The word tore from her throat as she lunged forward. The blade descended in a silver arc toward the caged cub. Time seemed to crystallize, each heartbeat stretching into eternity, as Lyra's body moved without conscious thought. She shoved past the shocked crowd, her worn boots slipping on the frost-slicked cobblestones. Her body collided with Aldrich's arm just as the blade reached the cage. The impact sent them both sprawling, but not before the hunter's knife found flesh, not the cub's, but Lyra's. As she threw herself between predator and prey, the blade carved deep across her ribs, and hot blood immediately began soaking through her threadbare dress. "Mama!" Ivy's scream pierced the sudden silence. Lyra gasped, her hands fumbling with the cage's simple latch even as crimson spread beneath her. The mechanism was old, rusted, but desperation gave her strength. The door swung open and the silver cub tumbled out, its blue eyes wide with something between animal fear and startling comprehension. "Run," she whispered to it, though she knew it couldn't understand. But the cub pressed against her side instead, a soft whine escaping its throat. Aldrich struggled to his feet, his face purple with rage. "You dare assault the Lord's huntsman for this abomination?" The crowd had formed a circle now, some calling for the healer, others demanding justice, power. But Lyra could only focus on the small, warm body pressed against her bleeding side. The cub was trembling, but not from fear. It was trying to press its small form against her wound, as if it could somehow stop the bleeding. "She's lost her mind," someone said. "The cursed woman has finally shown her true nature." "Seize her," Aldrich commanded, but before anyone could move, something extraordinary happened. The cub threw back its head and howled. Not the high, playful yip of a young wolf, but something ancient and commanding that seemed to reach into the very marrow of everyone present. The sound reverberated through the market square, through the buildings, seeming to echo off the distant mountains themselves. And it was answered. From the ghostwood, from the mountains, from places unseen, came answering howls. Dozens, then hundreds. A symphony of wild voices that made every human in the square freeze with primordial fear. Even Aldrich, veteran of countless hunts, took an involuntary step backward. "What have you done?" he hissed at Lyra. But she was beyond answering. The wound was deep, too deep. Her vision was already graying at the edges as blood pooled beneath her. She managed to wrap one arm around the cub, pulling it closer. "It's all right," she murmured, though whether to the cub or to Ivy, who had broken free of the crowd to kneel beside her mother, she wasn't sure. Sometimes doing what's right costs everything. The cub nuzzled into her neck, and she could have sworn she felt tears, but wolves didn't cry, did they? Its small tongue lapped at her face, and it made soft, almost musical sounds that seemed desperately trying to convey something. The howling grew closer. Through her fading vision, Lyra saw shapes moving at the edge of the market, massive forms that moved with predatory grace. The crowd began to scatter, vendors abandoning their wares, guards reaching for weapons with shaking hands. "The pack," Aldrich breathed. "The entire Ghostwood pack is coming." But Lyra was sinking, the cold of the cobblestones seeping into her bones even as something warm, the cub, stayed pressed against her heart. Darkness and light warred behind Lyra's eyelids. She floated in a space between life and death, aware of her body lying on the frozen ground, but somehow also standing beside it, watching. The market square had erupted into chaos, people fleeing, guards shouting, Aldrich bellowing orders that no one seemed to hear. But at the center of it all was stillness. The silver cub remained curled against Lyra's chest, and around them, a circle of massive wolves had formed. They stood like statues, their eyes glowing with a light that had nothing to do with nature. "Please," Ivy sobbed, her small hands pressed against her mother's wound. "Please don't leave me." The cub lifted its head, looking directly at Ivy with those impossibly blue eyes. Then it did something that defied everything Lyra thought she knew about the world it spoke. Not in words, but directly into her fading consciousness. Its voice young but carrying an echo of something ancient. "Thank you, brave mother. You saw me not as monster, but as child." Lyra's spirit self gasped. She could hear it, understand it, though her physical body grew colder with each passing second. "You're welcome," she thought back, not knowing if the cub could hear her. "The ancient laws demand a life for a life," the cub's voice continued in her mind. "You gave yours for mine. This cannot go unanswered." Through her failing vision, Lyra saw the circle of wolves part. A figure approached, tall, moving with fluid grace that marked him as something beyond mortal. She couldn't make out his features, but she felt his presence like the weight of mountains, like the depth of ancient forests. Power radiated from him in waves that made the air itself shimmer. He knelt beside her dying form, and when he spoke, his voice carried the rumble of distant thunder. "You saved my son. I would. The words weren't in any language Lyra knew, yet she understood them perfectly. The cub, the small, frightened creature she'd protected, was heir to something magnificent and terrible. Large hands, warm despite the winter cold, pressed against her wound. Lyra felt heat spreading from that touch. Not the heat of fever or flame, but something that felt like starlight and moonbeams made tangible. The pain, which had been fading into numbness, suddenly blazed back to life. She screamed, or tried to, but no sound emerged from her physical throat. Only her spirit cried out as that foreign power invaded her body, knitting flesh and muscle with brutal efficiency. The wound is too severe. A new voice spoke in her mind, deeper, older, carrying the weight of centuries. She has lost too much blood. Her body fails. Then give her a new one, the ancient voice replied, and Lyra realized with shock that it came from the figure kneeling beside her, the father of the cub. She saved the heir of the Moonblood line. The old laws are clear. She is human. Another consciousness, protested one of the watching wolves. The transformation will kill her. Then she dies with honor instead of abandonment. The Alpha's mental voice was firm. But I sensed something more in her. Power sleeping. Magic denied. Lyra felt that massive consciousness turn its full attention to her. And it was like being studied by a mountain, ancient and patient and utterly inhuman. Yet beneath the otherworldly power, she sensed something else, gratitude so profound it brought tears to her spirit eyes. You are dying, brave one, he said directly to her consciousness. But you need not. Accept my gift, and you will rise as something new. Refuse, and I will ensure your passing is peaceful, and your daughter protected always. My daughter will be cherished as Pack, whether you stay or go. The choice hung before Lyra, like a door between worlds, death with honor, or transformation into something unknown. But as she wavered on that threshold, watching Ivy sob over her dying body, the decision made itself. I accept. The Alpha's power surged into her like a river breaking through a dam. But the moment it touched her core, something unexpected happened. The curse her grandmother had warned her to hide, the healing gift that had made the townspeople whisper, witch. It blazed to life in response to the Alpha's magic. Golden light erupted from Lyra's body, so bright that even the assembled wolves stepped back. The Alpha himself jerked in surprise, his connection to her consciousness flooding with amazement. By the old moon, you're not just human, you're a Lightweaver. Lyra didn't understand the term, but she felt her magic responding to his, not fighting but dancing, intertwining in patterns that felt older than memory. The healing power she'd suppressed for years roared free, meeting his transformative energy halfway. Her body convulsed on the cobblestones. Bones didn't just heal, they reformed, becoming something stronger. Blood didn't just replenish, it changed, carrying new fire through her veins. And her magic transformed from a hidden spring to a roaring river. Aldrich, who had been frozen in terror, suddenly found his courage or his stupidity. Demon, I'll not let you corrupt. He never finished the sentence. Lyra's eyes snapped open, blazing with golden light, and her hand shot out. She didn't touch him, didn't need to. Pure force erupted from her palm, sending the huntsman flying across the square to crash into a merchant's stall. She sat up, gasping, her body humming with power she didn't understand. The wound was gone, not even a scar remained. But more than that, she felt different, stronger. Her senses were sharper. She could hear every rapid heartbeat in the square, smell fear and awe and something wild coming from the wolves around her. Mama? Ivy's voice was tiny, uncertain. Lyra turned to her daughter, afraid of what she might see in those innocent eyes. But Ivy just threw her arms around Lyra's neck, sobbing with relief. You're alive. The silver cub patted over, its tail wagging slightly. When it looked at her now, Lyra could actually feel its thoughts, gratitude, and curiosity, and something like kinship. The Alpha rose to his full height, and Lyra finally saw him clearly. He was beautiful, in an inhuman way, with silver-streaked dark hair that fell to his shoulders, eyes that shifted between human blue and wolf gold. and features that belonged in ancient tapestries of forgotten gods. Power radiated from him in visible waves, making the air around him shimmer. "Rise, Lightweaver," he commanded, and his voice now carried into the physical world, speaking perfect common tongue, despite his foreign appearance. "Past. You have passed through death and emerged transformed. By the ancient laws, you are now Pack." Lyra stood, surprised by how easily her body moved, how natural it felt despite being fundamentally changed. She could feel the wolves around her, not just see them, but sense their presence in her mind, like warm lights in the darkness. "What did you do to me?" she whispered. "I gave you the gift of the wolf," the Alpha replied. "But your magic changed it, made it something unique. You are the first Lightweaver to join the pack in 1,000 years." "Person. She's an abomination." Aldrich had struggled to his feet, blood running from his nose. "Lord Blackwood will hear of this." The Alpha's expression didn't change, but Lyra felt his amusement through their new connection. "Lord Blackwood rules humans, not the children of the moon. And this one is no longer fully human." He turned to address the cowering crowd. "Let it be known this woman saved my heir. Any who harm her or hers will answer to the entire Moonblood pack. We are not the monsters you paint us as, but we protect our own." 3 days had passed since the market incident, and Lyra wished she could say her life had returned to normal. But nothing about her existence could be called normal anymore. The Alpha, who had introduced himself as Fenris, had insisted she and Ivy stay at the pack's stronghold hidden deep in the Ghostwood. It wasn't quite a castle, but rather a series of elaborate caves and carved passages within the mountain itself, expanded over generations into something between fortress and den. The transformation isn't complete. The pack's healer, an ancient woman named Senna, had explained. "The Lightweaver magic in your blood is fighting with the wolf spirit. They must learn to coexist." Or, she hadn't needed to finish. Lyra could feel it herself, two forces warring inside her, each trying to dominate. During the day, her healing magic would surge, allowing her to mend wounds with a touch. But at night, the wolf fought for control, bringing fever dreams and bone-deep agony. Now, as dawn broke through the mountain's crystal skylights, Lyra woke to find her hands glowing with soft golden light again. The bedding beneath her was scorched in places where her magic had leaked out during sleep. "Mama?" Ivy peered around the doorway of their chamber, surprise. The little girl had adapted remarkably well, making friends with the pack's cubs, learning their ways. "Senna says you should come." Something's happened. Lyra followed her daughter through the winding passages, trying to ignore how her enhanced senses picked up everything conversations 3 floors away, the scent of every pack member who'd passed this way in the last day. The minute vibrations in the stone that told her exactly how many people moved through the stronghold. In the main hall, she found chaos. Wounded wolves in both human and animal form were being carried in. The silver cub she'd saved, whose name she'd learned was Kai, was pressed against his father's leg, whimpering. Fenris stood at the center, his face like carved stone as he received reports. When he saw Lyra, something flickered in his eyes. Concern, perhaps, or something deeper. "What happened?" she asked. "Lord Blackwood's men. They've started using poisoned weapons, something that prevents our healing." Lyra moved to the nearest wounded, a young woman with a deep gash across her stomach. The wound was tinged with sickly purple, and it smelled wrong like decay and bitter herbs. Without thinking, Lyra placed her hands on the wound. Her healing magic rose immediately, golden light spilling from her palms. But when it touched the poison, pain lanced through her own body. She gasped but didn't pull away. "Don't," Senna commanded. The poison was, but something extraordinary was happening. The golden light wasn't just healing, it was purifying, burning away the poison like sunlight through shadow. The wound began to close, healthy pink skin replacing the sickly purple. Lyra swayed when it was done, exhausted but triumphant. Around her, the pack stared in amazement. She moved to the next wounded, and the next, working until her legs shook and her vision blurred. Each healing took more from her, and she could feel the wolf spirit inside growing agitated, wanting to surface, to protect, to fight. Enough, Fenris commanded, catching her arm as she stumbled toward another patient. You're pushing too hard. There are more wounded, and there will be more dead if you burn yourself out. His grip was firm but gentle. You're still transforming. This kind of strain could... He was cut off as pain exploded through Lyra's body. Not the healing exhaustion, this was the transformation agony she'd been experiencing nightly, but worse. It felt like her bones were trying to reshape themselves, while her magic fought to maintain her human form. She collapsed, convulsing. Through the haze of agony, she heard Fenris shouting orders, felt him lift her. And darkness claimed her, but not before she heard him whisper something that her pain-addled mind couldn't quite grasp. Not again. I won't lose another Lightweaver. Not her. 2 weeks. It had been 2 weeks since Lyra had seen Fenris properly, and the absence felt like a physical wound. After her collapse in the healing hall, she'd woken to find herself restricted to her chambers, with Senna checking on her every few hours. The elderly healer tried to mask her concern, but Lyra could smell the worry on her, one of the many unsettling aspects of her enhanced senses. The Alpha has duties, Senna would say whenever Lyra asked about Fenris. The war with Lord Blackwood escalates. He cannot be distracted. As if Lyra was nothing more than an inconvenience. But at night, when the transformation pain was at its worst, she could swear she sensed him nearby. More than once, she'd woken to find the door slightly ajar, the scent of pine and winter, his scent lingering in the air. She'd catch glimpses of a shadow in the hallway, hear footsteps that stopped just outside her door. But by morning, she always convinced herself it had been another fever dream. The wolf inside her was growing stronger, more insistent. It wanted things Lyra didn't understand to run, to hunt, to find its alpha, and... She shut down that line of thought, focusing instead on the small healing tasks Senna allowed her. Pack members would come with minor injuries, and Lyra would practice controlling her magic, keeping it from overwhelming the wolf spirit. Young Kai visited daily, the silver cub having appointed himself as her guardian. He would curl up at the foot of her bed, and through their mental connection, share stories of pack life, of his father's great deeds, of the prophecies about Lightweavers. Father is afraid, Kai admitted one evening as Lyra ran her fingers through his soft fur. Of Lord Blackwood? Of you. Of what you mean. Before Lyra could ask what he meant, Ivy burst into the room. Mama, riders approach. Lord Blackwood's banner. Lyra rushed to the window, her heart pounding. A contingent of soldiers was indeed approaching the Ghostwood boundary, and at their head, Aldrich. The huntsmen had survived their last encounter, and now wore the black armor of Blackwood's elite guard. The pack was already mobilizing. From her window, Lyra could see wolves emerging from hidden positions, and at their head, Fenris, in his massive wolf form, silver black and magnificent, larger than a horse. But something was wrong. As the confrontation began below, Lyra felt a strange pull in her chest. The bond she'd been trying to ignore, the connection formed when Fenris had saved her, suddenly flared to life. She could feel his emotions, rage at the intrusion, fear for his pack, and underneath it all, a longing that matched her own. He thinks of you. Kai's mental voice was matter of fact. Every moment. Senna says he stands outside your door each night but won't enter. He fears his presence, makes your transformation worse. What? Lyra spun to face the cub. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because it's true. When an alpha claims a Lightweaver, the bond is intense. It can drive both mad if not properly formed. The last time it happened, both died during the transformation. A howl split the air, not Fenris, but Aldrich, somehow producing a mockery of a wolf's call. Lyra saw him hold up something, a vial of liquid that gleamed sickly purple in the fading light. We have perfected the poison, Aldrich's voice carried even to her window. Surrender the witch and the cub, or we'll poison every water source in the ghostwood. Your pack will die in agony. Fenris shifted to human form, his voice carrying clear authority. You would commit such an atrocity? To eliminate the demon wolves? Lord Blackwood considers it a mercy. Aldrich's grin was visible even from this distance. You have 1 hour to decide. As the soldiers retreated to the forest edge, Lyra made her decision. She couldn't hide anymore, couldn't pretend the bond between her and Fenris didn't exist, couldn't let the pack suffer for protecting her. She stood, ignoring Senna's protests, and for the first time in 2 weeks, left her chamber. The pull in her chest led her directly to Fenris, who stood in the main hall, surrounded by his advisors. When their eyes met, the bond between them roared to life, so intense that several nearby wolves whimpered and stepped back. Gold and silver light danced between them, visible to all. We need to talk, Lyra said, her voice steadier than she felt. About this bond. About what I am, and about how we're going to stop them. The War Council had been arguing for an hour, but Lyra barely heard them. She stood beside Fenris, close enough to feel his warmth, but not touching, the bond between them humming with suppressed energy. Every time their eyes met, golden and silver light flickered in the air between them. Quote, "We could retreat deeper into the mountains," one elder suggested, kind of desurve. "And let them poison our territory?" another argued. "The ghostwood has been ours for 1,000 years. Enough, Fenris commanded, his voice cutting through the debate. We need a different solution. I'll go. Every head turned to Lyra. Absolutely not. Fenris's response was immediate, his eyes flashing from blue to gold. They want me, Lyra continued. If I can get close enough to Aldrich, my magic might be able to neutralize the poison. You can barely control your transformations, Senna interrupted. The stress could kill you. Then I'll die protecting the pack that protected me. Lyra met Fenris's gaze steadily. Isn't that what pack does? The Alpha stood so abruptly his chair toppled backward. Everyone out. Now. The hall emptied with supernatural speed, leaving only Lyra, Fenris, and Kai, who refused to leave despite his father's glare. You don't understand what you're suggesting, Fenris said, his control visibly fraying. The bond between us if you die, I will survive, Lyra interrupted. You're the Alpha. The pack needs you. The pack needs both of us. The words seemed torn from him. Do you think I've stayed away these 2 weeks by choice? Every instinct screams at me to complete the bond, to claim you properly, but your magic. He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. Your Lightweaver magic is the only thing keeping you alive through the transformation, but it's also preventing it from completing. If I get too close, if the bond strengthens before you're ready. Father, Kai's young voice interrupted. She's already decided. They both looked at the silver cub, who sat with unusual solemnity. I can feel it through our connection. Kai continued. She won't let others die for her. It's not who she island. A horn sounded. From outside the hour was nearly up. Lyra stepped closer to Fenris, close enough that the bond sent sparks of sensation through both of them. Then help me. Teach me to control it. We have minutes, not weeks. Fenris's hands clenched at his sides. There's only one way to fast-track the control, and it could kill you. And tell me. We partially complete the bond. Not fully, that would definitely kill you in your current state, but enough to stabilize your magic. His eyes were pure gold now. But once started, it can't be reversed. You would be forever changed, forever tied to me and the pack. I already am, Lyra said simply. Power. Before Fenris could respond, the door burst open. A young scout, breathing hard. Alpha! Lord Blackwood himself has arrived. He's demanding the woman be handed over, or he'll release the poison immediately. Lyra felt Fenris's rage through their incomplete bond, but also his fear, not for himself, but for her, for his pack, for his son. Bring me armor, Lyra commanded, with an authority she didn't know she possessed. And gather the strongest healers. What are you planning? Fenris demanded. Something stupid, Lyra admitted. But possibly brilliant. You said my Lightweaver magic is unique, that I'm the first in 1,000 years. What if that's exactly what we need? What if I can turn their poison into something else? You don't know that you can. No, Lyra agreed. But I know I have to try, and I know you're going to help me. She turned to Kai. I need you to do something brave, little one. The cub straightened. Anything. I need you to trust me, even when it looks like I'm betraying you. Outside, Lord Blackwood's voice boomed, magically enhanced. Time's up, beasts. Send out the witch or watch your pack die screaming. Lyra looked at Fenris one last time. Whatever happens, know that saving Kai was the best decision I ever made. Then, before anyone could stop her, she walked out to face their enemies. Lord Blackwood was exactly what Lyra had expected. Cold, elegant, and utterly without mercy. He sat atop a black destroyer, his armor polished to mirror brightness, surrounded by 50 armed men. Beside him, Aldrich held a large crystal vial of the purple poison, enough to contaminate every water source for miles. The witch comes willingly, Blackwood observed, his voice cultured and dispassionate. How unexpected. Lyra walked forward slowly, feeling the pack's eyes on her from hidden positions. Through the bond, she felt Fenris's barely controlled rage and something else, trust. He was trusting her plan, whatever it was. I'll come with you, Lyra said, loud enough for all to hear. But only if you spare the pack. Mama, no! Ivy's voice rang out. The little girl had broken free from her minders and now ran toward Lyra, tears streaming down her face. This wasn't part of the plan, but Lyra caught her daughter, holding her tight. Trust me, she whispered. Remember what grandmother always said? Sometimes the greatest power is in knowing when to yield. Precious. How touching, Blackwood drawled. The witch has motherly feelings. Tell me, woman, do you know what you are? A healer, Lyra replied, setting Ivy gently aside despite her daughter's protests. No. Blackwood leaned forward in his saddle. You're an aberration. A Lightweaver, the last of a cursed bloodline that nearly destroyed both our kinds centuries ago. Lyra felt shock ripple through the pack consciousness. Even Fenris hadn't known this. Oh yes, Blackwood continued, enjoying the revelation. My family has kept records your beasts thought burned. Lightweavers, witches who could bond with wolves, become something neither human nor beast. They grew too powerful, threatened the natural order, so humans and wolves united to destroy them. You're lying, Lyra said, though something deep in her magic responded to his words with recognition. Am I? Blackwood gestured to Aldrich, who pulled out an ancient tome. Would you like to know how the last Lightweaver died? She went mad from the incomplete bond, killed her entire pack and half a human city, before finally burning herself out. The Alpha, who had tried to claim her, was found torn apart by her own hands. Through the bond, Lyra felt Fenris's shock and then his mental voice, stronger than ever. It changes nothing. You are not her. You are Lyra, who saved my son. But here's what the records don't say, Blackwood continued. Lightweavers could do more than heal or destroy. They could transform things at their very essence. Poison to medicine, hate to love, death to life. His eyes gleamed. And I need that power. What? Aldrich turned to his lord in confusion. You thought I wanted her dead? Blackwood laughed. No, my loyal fool. I wanted her desperate. You see, my own son lies dying from a wasting curse, a curse that only a Lightweaver can break. The truth hit Lyra like cold water. This had all been orchestrated, the market, the poison threat, everything designed to draw her out. So here's my offer, Blackwood said. Come willingly, heal my son, and I'll spare your daughter and even these beasts. Refuse, and he nodded to Aldrich. The huntsman raised the poison vial, but his face showed his own shock at being used. "You bastard," Aldrich breathed. "You told me we were cleansing the land of evil." "And we are," Blackwood replied smoothly. "By controlling it." That's when Lyra felt it, a surge of power from the forest. Not from Fenris, but from dozens of wolves, all channeling their energy toward her. Through the bond, she heard Fenris's voice. "The pack chooses. They offer their strength to their Lightweaver. Use it." Power flooded through Lyra, but instead of overwhelming her, her magic absorbed it, transformed it. Gold and silver light erupted from her skin, so bright that the horses reared in terror. "You want to know what a Lightweaver can really do?" Lyra's voice carried otherworldly harmonics. "Let me show you." She reached out, not physically but with her magic, and touched the poison in Aldrich's hands. The vial shattered, purple liquid splashing over the huntsman, but instead of killing him, it transformed. The poison became healing light, mending every scar on Aldrich's body, including ones from childhood. Blackwood breathed. "I am not your tool," Lyra said, power crackling around her. "I am not your weapon. I am the bridge between worlds, and I choose the pack." The standoff lasted only moments before Blackwood played his final card. "Seize the child," he commanded. His soldiers moved toward Ivy, but they hadn't counted on Kai. The silver cub launched himself at the nearest soldier, his small form shifting mid-leap into something between wolf and human, a form that should have been impossible for one so young. His claws raked across armor, sending the man sprawling. Paused. "The air can already shift?" Blackwood's eyes widened with genuine surprise. "Fascinating." The distraction was enough. Fenris materialized from the forest's edge, moving faster than human eyes could follow. He reached Ivy first, pulling her to safety, but Blackwood had anticipated this. "Archers," the Lord commanded. Dozens of arrows flew, all aimed at Fenris and Ivy. Lyra reacted instinctively, throwing up a shield of golden light that incinerated the projectiles mid-flight. But the effort cost her. The barely controlled transformation energy in her body surged wildly, sending her to her knees. "You see?" Blackwood dismounted, approaching slowly. "You're dying, Lightweaver. The power is too much for a half-transformed body, but I can help you. My castle holds ancient texts, rituals that could complete your transformation safely." "Don't listen to him," Fenris growled, now standing protectively over Lyra. Ivy clutched to his chest. "Your Alpha can't help you," Blackwood continued. "If he completes the bond now, the surge of power will kill you instantly. But if you don't complete it soon, your own magic will tear you apart." He smiled coldly. "Only I have the knowledge to save you. Think you can?" Lyra felt the truth in his words. The power the pack had given her was accelerating her body's breakdown. She could feel herself fragmenting, human, wolf, and Lightweaver all pulling in different directions. "I'll give you one more chance," Blackwood said. "Come with me. Heal my son. In return, I'll help you survive the transformation and guarantee your daughter's safety." "And the pack?" Lyra gasped through the pain. "Will be left alone, as long as they remain in the Ghostwood." Through the bond, she felt Fenris's anguish. "Don't. We'll find another way." "There is no other way. You know it, I know it." She tried to stand but stumbled. Aldrich, of all people, caught her arm. The huntsman's face was conflicted, still reeling from the transformation of poison to healing. "My lady," he said quietly, and the respect in his voice was genuine. "What you did, the healing no one has ever." "Make your choice, Lightweaver," Blackwood interrupted. "Your daughter's life, your own life, and peace for the pack, or everyone dies here today." Lyra looked at Fenris, at Kai, at her precious Ivy. The choice seemed impossible: sacrifice herself to Blackwood's control, or watch everyone she'd come to love die. But then Kai's young voice spoke in her mind. "There's a third option, Lightweaver. One from the old stories." "What option?" "The Lunar Ritual. Tonight is the full moon. If you can survive until moonrise, you could complete the transformation without Father's direct bond. But the ritual requires. Fenris's mental voice was sharp with alarm, a willing sacrifice. Someone of royal blood must offer their life force to stabilize the transformation. No, both Lyra and Fenris said aloud. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. Plotting, are we? My patience wears thin. Kai shifted to his human form, a boy of perhaps 10, with his father's proud features and those distinctive blue eyes. Lord Blackwood, he said formally, I invoke the right of substitution. Gasps rose from both wolves and humans. You can't, Fenris started, but Kai continued. By ancient law, I offer myself in the Lightweaver's place. A royal wolf heir is worth more than a dying witch, is he not? Power. Blackwood's eyes gleamed with interest. The heir apparent of the Moonblood pack? Now that is a prize worth considering. Kai, no. Lyra tried to reach for him, but another wave of transformation agony brought her to the ground. The cub looked at her, with eyes far too old for his young face. You saved me when you didn't even know what I was. Let me save you now. Your Highness, Blackwood said mockingly to the boy. You have a deal. Come quietly, and I'll withdraw my forces. But Kai wasn't moving toward Blackwood. Instead, he placed his small hand on Lyra's shoulder, and she felt his power young but pure, flowing into her. The real substitution, he whispered. My life force for your stability. Complete the ritual, Mother of Light. Save us all. No, Fenris roared, lunging for his son. But Kai's power had already created a barrier between them, a sphere of silver light that even the Alpha couldn't breach. Lyra felt the child's life force flowing into her, stabilizing the chaotic energies tearing her apart. But she could also feel what it was costing him, years of his life burning away with each second. Stop, she gasped. Kai, please. This is my choice, the boy said firmly. The pack needs its Lightweaver, Father needs his mate, and I need my mother to live. Mother. The word broke something inside Lyra. She tried to pull away, to refuse his sacrifice, but the ritual had already begun. Ancient magic, older than either human or wolf civilizations, took hold. Blackwood watched with fascination. The Lunar Ritual. I thought it was myth. Quote, everything you thought myth is real, Aldrich said quietly. Power. The huntsman had moved to stand between Blackwood and the glowing sphere, and everything you called evil might be good. If... Stand aside, Aldrich. No. The huntsman drew his blade not toward the wolves, but toward his own lord. I've seen enough. This woman showed me mercy when I deserved none. That child offers his life for others. Who are the real monsters here? Blackwood's face contorted with rage. Then you'll die with them, he signaled his archers. Kill them all. But as the arrows flew, something extraordinary happened. The poison that had splashed on Aldrich earlier hadn't just healed him, it had changed him. His eyes flashed gold, and he moved with inhuman speed, deflecting arrows with his blade. What did you do to me? Aldrich gasped, looking at his hands which now bore faint claw marks. I transformed the poison, Lyra managed to say through gritted teeth. It became a blessing instead of a curse. You're like us now. The battle erupted around them, but inside the sphere of light, Lyra fought a different war. Kai was fading, his small form growing translucent, as he poured more of himself into her. Almost there, he whispered. Just a little more. No! Lyra grabbed his hands, and instead of just receiving his power, she pushed back. Her Lightweaver magic, now partially stabilized, reached into the boy and began to give as well as take. If we're doing this, we do it together, Pow. That's not how the ritual works. I'm a Lightweaver, Lyra said fiercely. I transform things, so I'm transforming this ritual. Gold and silver light swirled together, creating something new. Instead of one sacrificing for the other, they began to share life force, power, even the bond itself. Lyra felt Kai not just as pack, but as true family, as if he really were her son. Through it all, she was aware of Fenris fighting desperately to reach them, of the battle raging between Blackwood's forces and the pack, of Ivy screaming her name. But she couldn't stop now. The moon was rising, and with it came the final surge of power. Together, she told Kai. We rise together or not at all. The sphere exploded outward in a nova of light. When it cleared, Lyra stood transformed, not fully human, not fully wolf, but something in between. Her hair had turned silver white, her eyes glowed gold, and power radiated from her in visible waves. Kai lay unconscious but breathing in her arms, alive but forever changed. Silver streaks now ran through his dark hair, and when his eyes fluttered open, they held flecks of gold among the blue. My son, Fenris was suddenly there, crushing them both in an embrace. But the moment of reunion was short-lived. Blackwood, seeing his plans crumbling, played one final card. From his armor, he pulled out a black crystal that pulsed with malevolent energy. If I can't have the Lightweaver, he snarled, no one can. He shattered the crystal against the ground, and darkness erupted from it, not mere shadow, but a void that began consuming everything it touched. Trees withered, grass died, and any human or wolf caught in its path screamed in agony. Death magic. Senna gasped from where she'd appeared at the forest edge. He's unleashed pure death magic. Lyra stood, still weak but determined. She was a Lightweaver, a transformer of essences. If she could turn poison to healing, perhaps she could turn death to life. But as she reached for the spreading darkness with her power, she realized the terrible truth: to transform death magic, she would have to take it into herself first. And that much death would destroy even a Lightweaver. There has to be another way, Fenris said desperately. Lyra looked at him, at Kai, at Ivy, at the pack that had become her family. There is, she said, quietly, but you're not going to like it. I need you to complete the bond, Lyra said to Fenris. Right now. That will kill you. Your transformation isn't complete, I know. Lyra grabbed his hands, and spark of power jumped between them. But I'm not just asking you to bond with me. I'm asking the entire pack. Shock rippled through the assembled wolves. What she was suggesting had never been done. A Lightweaver bonded not to one wolf, but to all. The death magic will consume everything. Lyra continued, watching the void spread closer. But if I'm connected to all of you, if we share the burden, it could work, Senna breathed. Or it could kill everyone. Then we die together, Aldrich said, stepping forward. The former huntsman's partial transformation had left him standing between worlds, and he knelt before Lyra. I pledge myself to the pack and the Lightweaver who showed me mercy. One by one, the wolves began to step forward, both those in human form and those who remained as wolves. Each placed a hand or paw on Lyra, creating a living chain of connection. My pack, Fenris said, his voice carrying absolute authority, chooses freely. Ivy ran to her mother, throwing her small arms around Lyra's waist. I choose too, Mama. You're human, sweetheart. No, Ivy said firmly. I'm yours. That's all that matters. Kai, still weak but determined, placed his hand over his father's. The prince of the pack chooses his mother. Fenris looked at Lyra, and in his eyes she saw love, fear, and absolute trust. Together then, he said. He pulled her close, and unlike any desperate moment before, this time he was fully conscious, fully in control. His teeth found the mark he'd initially left, reopening it carefully. Power. But this time, Lyra bit him back. The moment her teeth pierced his skin, the world exploded. Power didn't just flow, it erupted like a volcano. Through Fenris, she felt every member of the pack, their thoughts, their strength, their very souls opening to her. And she opened in return, pouring her Lightweaver magic into the collective, sharing it freely. The golden light of her power spread through the pack bond, transforming each wolf it touched. They didn't become Lightweavers. That was her burden alone, but they became something more than ordinary wolves. Now, Lyra gasped against Fenris's throat. Help me transform the death. As one, the pack turned toward the spreading void. Lyra reached out with her power, but now she had the strength of dozens behind her. The death magic slammed into her like a physical blow, trying to unmake her very existence. But she wasn't alone. Through the bond, the pack shared the burden. What would have destroyed one person was distributed among many. And Lyra did what Lightweavers did, she transformed. Death became life. Darkness became light. The void that had been consuming everything reversed, becoming a wave of renewal that restored everything it had destroyed. Trees that had withered burst into bloom. Wounded fighters found their injuries healed. Even Blackwood, caught at the edge of his own death magic, was transformed. The hatred and ambition that had driven him dissolved, replaced by horror at what he'd done. He fell to his knees, truly seeing for the first time. "What have I become?" he whispered. But Lyra had no attention to spare for him. The ritual was completing, her transformation finalizing. Through the bond, she felt herself changing at the most fundamental level. Not human, not wolf, but the bridge between worlds, the first true Lightweaver in 1,000 years. When the light finally faded, she stood transformed. Her appearance was largely human but enhanced silver-white hair that seemed to hold moonlight, eyes that shifted between gold and silver, and an aura of power that made the air around her shimmer. Power. But more than that, she could feel every member of her pack, each unique spirit now part of her eternal constellation. And at the center of it all was Fenris, her mate, her anchor, her equal. "It's done," she said, and her voice carried harmonics of both human and wolf. Fenris pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. Through their completed bond, she felt his overwhelming relief and love. "Mother," Kai said. And this time the title was more than words, it was truth. The ritual had bound them as surely as blood, places. "My family," Lyra said, looking at her pack, her true pack. Even Aldrich was part of it now. The transformed huntsman, looking dazed, but somehow, at peace. 6 months had passed since the night of the Lunar Ritual, and the Ghostwood had become a place of pilgrimage. Lyra stood at the entrance to the pack's stronghold, watching as another group of seekers approached. Some were human, bearing sick children or elderly parents. Others were wolves from distant packs, hoping to witness the legendary Lightweaver, costly batters. "You don't have to heal them all," Fenris said, appearing beside her with his silent grace. His arms wrapped around her from behind, and she leaned into his warmth. "I know," Lyra replied, "but I can't turn away those who truly need help." Through their bond, she felt his mixture of pride and concern. The completion of their mating had only strengthened over time, to the point where they could hold entire conversations without speaking aloud. The Human-Wolf Accord had been Lyra's idea, a formal peace treaty between the human settlements and wolf packs, with the Lightweavers serving as mediators. It had been Blackwood, surprisingly, who had become its strongest human advocate. The former lord had been transformed by his encounter with death magic. He'd abdicated his position, dedicating his remaining years to making amends. His son, miraculously healed by Lyra's power, had become one of the first human children to study with the pack. "Mama, Papa," Ivy's voice rang out as she raced toward them, Kai close behind. The two had become inseparable, their bond as siblings absolute. "The crystals are glowing!" Ivy announced breathlessly. In the crystal chamber deep within the mountain, the pack had gathered. 3 of the ancient stones were pulsing with light, cracks spreading across their surfaces. The first crystal shattered, releasing a pulse of golden light that resolved into an ethereal figure, a woman in ancient robes, translucent and glowing. "A living Lightweaver," the spirit said, her voice like wind chimes. "After so long, I am Selvana, once guardian of the eastern reaches." The second and third crystals released their own spirits, teachers from ages past, preserved to guide future Lightweavers. We have much to teach you, Sylvana said to Lyra. About what you are, what you can become. The bridge between worlds is more than metaphor. There are other realms, other peoples waiting to be united. Other realms? Lyra asked. The wolves and humans were just the beginning, another spirit explained. There are the sea singers in the depths, the sky dancers in the clouds, the earth speakers in the deep caves, all separated by ancient conflicts, all waiting for a Lightweaver to bridge their worlds. Fenris's hand found hers, squeezing gently. Through their bond, she felt his question, and her answer was immediate. They would face whatever came together. Aldrich entered the chamber, and Lyra still marveled at his transformation. The former huntsman had become the pack's primary liaison with human settlements, his unique position as both human-born and wolf-transformed, making him ideal for the role. "My lady," he said, bowing slightly. "The northern settlements have agreed to the accord. They're requesting a Lightweaver's blessing on the treaty." That evening, as the pack gathered for the moon ceremony, Lyra stood before them all. Her family, Fenris, Ivy, Kai, stood with her, but so did every wolf who had chosen to share her burden that night. "We are no longer just a pack," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the stronghold. "We are the beginning of something new. A world where human and wolf, magic and mundane, can coexist. It won't be easy. There will be those on all sides who resist. But we've already proven that together, we can transform death into life, poison into healing, enemies into allies." She raised her hand, and golden light erupted from her palm, shooting into the sky like a beacon. Across the realm, other Lightweavers, humans who carried the dormant gift, waiting to be awakened, would see it and know they weren't alone. "Let them come," Lyra said. "Let them learn. Let us build a world where no one has to hide their gifts, where no child is called cursed for being different." Fenris stepped beside her, his own power, alpha strength mixed with the echo of her. Light through their bond, adding silver to her gold. "The age of division ends," he announced. "The age of unity begins." As the pack howled their agreement to the moon, Lyra felt the truth of it in her bones. She had died as a desperate mother protecting a cub. She had been reborn as something impossible, a bridge between worlds. 5 years later, Lyra stood at the edge of a cliff, looking out over a valley that had once been empty wilderness. Now it housed the academy, a place where humans, wolves, and the newly discovered sea singers learned together. Ivy and Kai, now teenagers, practiced combat forms in the courtyard below. Ivy had manifested her own Lightweaver abilities the previous winter, making her the second of the new generation. "Regrets?" Fenris asked, joining her. "Never," Lyra said, turning to kiss her mate, "though I sometimes miss the simplicity of just being the town's herb woman." He laughed, the sound rich and warm. "You were never just anything, my heart." A young wolf pup tugged at Lyra's robes, one of the many orphans the pack had taken in. "Lady Lightweaver, story time?" Lyra scooped the pup up, settling her on her hip. "And what story would you like today, little one?" "The one about the woman who saved the prince." "Ah," Lyra said, smiling. "That's a good one. It starts in a winter market, where a woman with empty pockets and a full heart saw something no one else did, that every life, no matter how different, has value." As she walked back toward the academy, surrounded by her pack, her family, her new world, Lyra thought about that desperate woman who had thrown herself in front of a blade to save a strange cub. That woman had died that day, in a way. But from her sacrifice had been born something extraordinary, not just a Lightweaver, but a new hope for all the realms. The transformation was complete, but the story was just beginning.